it's time to sit back and relax with your favorite drink. And listen. Good evening, my fearless listeners, and welcome once again to the Dark Between Worlds. I'll be your guide once again tonight, leading you down a path where truth unravels and the ordinary reveals its monstrous side. So draw the curtains, silence your phone, and listen closely. The hour is late and the stories waiting for you don't like to be ignored. Ready to step across the threshold? And let's descend together. I investigated a Slaughterhouse by Blake Blizzard. I never wanted to write anything like this. Never in several lifetimes did I think this was going to happen. Words can express my sorrow. But I will try. If nothing else, it'll explain what happened to my friends. They didn't deserve to die like that. The current year is 2022. About 10 years ago, me and my two friends, Pikes and Wolowski, decided to hunt for ghosts. No, a ghost didn't kill one of our family members, and we vowed revenge or anything like that. It was initially a goof. 2012 was probably the height of ghost hunting mania, thanks to Ghost Adventures on the Travel Channel and a dozen or so other similar shows. I've always been a fan of scary stories and dark mysteries. Pikes was the same, going a little more into the darker side of it. Demonic and satanic shit was more his speed. Wolowski, who we just called Wolo for short, he was along for the ride. There's only one thing we liked more than ghost hunting at that time, and that was drinking. And drinking was what Wolo gold medaled in. Once or twice a week after work, we'd get our $7 EVP recorders from Walmart, which were regular voice recorders, and search for paranormal activity. I was in charge of researching the haunted places near us that would hopefully yield any kind of evidence. After our first 2 or 3 investigations, we were all standing outside Wolo's truck after work. Typical pre-game, pre-ghost hunting ritual. I can remember it like it was yesterday. All of us worked the same shift, but Pike somehow got out 10 minutes before Wolo and I did. I had a fresh 12-pack of Milwaukee's Best on ice in Wolo's truck bed. As he and I made our way outside, we both found our buddy Pikes waiting for us. We also found that about 4 of the 12 ice beers were already gone. Good God, man. You destroyed 4 beers in 10 minutes, I said, raising my eyebrows at the 6'5" German tank. Now, he was fully born in America, but had an all-German family. He sheepishly smiled and gave both of us the, I've no idea what you're talking about, look. Wolo laughed. Shit, dude. I'm gonna need to catch up real freaking quick now. You guys start sweet-talking demon pussy when we get there. I'll go and pick up another 6er. Maybe a bottle. We all laughed. Pikes and I looked at each other, giving the here we go kind of look, referring to Wolo's drinking habits. We all drank, but he took it a little far some nights. I went to the cooler where Pikes had subtracted a third of our beers for the night and pulled out 3 airplane shot bottles of 100-proof peppermint schnapps. Spooky. As we commenced the pre-show ritual, Pike stopped, pulling his bottle back just before the toast. I looked at him in slight confusion. Hey, what's up, man? I asked. We need a name, Pikes finally suggested. A name? Wolo responded. Yeah, man. We're gonna make it big time, bros. We've already got some great EVPs, and even you got what looks like a shadow person, Wolo. And we need a brand for when the big networks start calling. And we all laughed. Clearly he was being funny, though. I did see he had a tiny shred of genuineness behind this. He really did like doing this. I smiled, looking down at my chilled bottle of high-proof peppermint schnapps. Pikes and Wolo's laughing trailed off. Oh, what's up, bro? Pikes asked. I looked up, realizing I was probably staring at that shot for an uncomfortable amount of time. I got it, I said quietly. I laughed to myself, finally meeting eyes with my compadres. I was met back with raised eyebrows. I took a long look at my shot and I raised it to the heavens. My bros followed me blindly. These, my friends, are spirit shots. We are investigating the paranormal. Both guys laughed. I felt like Rick Grimes saying his iconic line in the comic and show. We are the Walking Dead. Finally dropped the suspense. We are the SSPI. I studied their faces, still covered in confusion. Spirit shot paranormal investigators. Hey, Pikes yelled and slammed his shot into ours. We threw down the peppermint, winced, laughed, and got ready for our investigation. Can't remember what particular haunt we were in that day when the name was born. Don't remember much of that night, to be honest. Hopefully none of us drove home after that, but if I'm being honest, I'm sure Wolo drove us. That was one of our big mistakes, continuing to let him drive. We carried out our typical SSPI romps almost weekly. Impressive for 3 guys with full-time jobs and families. Thankfully, the respective wives understood, or at least tolerated it. One of our most successful nights found us at a public park. It was small and open to anyone. The reports online were funny, which made us want to investigate it that much harder. Halmich Park in Warren, Michigan, is laid out with your typical playground area, park benches, areas to picnic, and 4 baseball fields. It's mainly occupied by softball players. At any given time during the week, you could find anyone from T-ball squads to hardcore adult beer league softball players smacking the oversized baseball around. According to a random, unsubstantiated account online, the legend goes that softball players would purposefully try to hit bombs beyond the outfield fence to hit and kill kids. When they did, they ran out and circled the dead child, chanting. I can remember me and Pikes dying laughing as we read this. Not a chance this was real, but it certainly was entertaining. The other more well-known legend of Halmich was that when you drive into the park after midnight, your vehicle will hit some unknown object. When you check to see what you hit, nothing's there. As you look up, you see taillights leaving the park. The story being that some kid was killed by an unknowing driver in the past and sped away not to get in trouble for killing a child. Well, a lot of places in the US have a super similar story. Our preparations were complete. As usual, I did all the preparations. I researched the site, bought our booze, made sure we were all ready to spend the night in this park after hours. Wolo got the peppermint schnapps, so I guess I didn't do everything. As we entered the park, I felt the front of my '98 Mustang hit something. No way. I looked at Pikes in the passenger seat and then Wolo in the back. For once, we didn't have anything to say. I slowly got out of the car. Thankfully, I remembered to put it into park. I slowly approached the hood, searching my surroundings, not seeing any animal or person laying on the ground. What I did see, though, was a gigantic speed bump. I stood up straight and looked at my boy sitting in the car still. I tried to continue the mystery by scarily pointing in front of my car as if I'd hit something. Pikes then got out to look. Wolo stayed in the back. I'm sure he was either deep into his 9th beer or he really didn't care. Mike slowly made his way to me from the opposite side of the car, and he let out a gigantic laugh after he saw we'd just hit a speed bump too quickly. So, I put this together very fast. The legend said that as you enter the park, you hit something. When you look, nothing can be found. Then you find taillights. I failed to mention that I actually did see taillights as I left my vehicle. Well, the legend most likely comes from people like myself, hitting that huge speed bump, thinking it's a person. The entrance to the park is one way, so seeing taillights leaving isn't that insane, as there's only one way in and one way out. Well, the rest of the night's investigation did yield some fairly decent EVPs. After reviewing our findings the next day, hungover, I did hear a scary otherworldly voice breathe in and say, "Death, move." That was pretty good evidence. Scary evidence, at least. For many different reasons, this was our last investigation for over half a year. No fallout or anything, we just had too many other obligations elsewhere. More important obligations. We still worked together, We're still friends, but had to do the normal grown-up things that most people our age do. Until Pikes came to me one day with an idea for getting the gang back together. He was as giddy as a schoolgirl walking through the pink aisle at Target on her birthday. "Slaughterhouse," Pikes said. I stared at him. Surely there must be more that follows that one word, especially a word like that could elicit 1,000 different emotions. I kind of closed my mouth, puffing out my upper lip in conjunction with raising my eyes at him. The universal sign for, okay, I'm waiting for the rest. Like a wind-up toy that was stuck for a moment, he snapped back to his prior demeanor. Apparently Pikes had a buddy that he grew up with who works in a meat-packing facility. He said the place was getting slow, and if he wanted to come in and hang out when it was closed, he could make that happen. I stopped him. "So, your friend just randomly invited you to hang out in a meat-packing plant? I don't get it. You said Slaughterhouse. What am I missing?" I asked him, confused. He shook his head and rubbed his face like he was resetting. When his giant hand left his mouth, he was once again smiling. "Okay, yeah, it's a meatpacking plant, but they do dispatch their products on site, so it is technically a slaughterhouse. And that sounds more badass. And second, he said it's haunted, dude." Now I get where this is going. Look at my big German friend scouting out a location to investigate all on his own, like a big boy. "Nice, bro, nice," I beamed. He went on to give me the details, which I related to Wolo, and he was in, no doubt about that. After I was filled in a bit more with the details, I found out that Pike's friend knew he liked scary ghost adventure stuff, and said he had some first-hand accounts of creepy happenings while working. Intriguing. We've half investigated a good half dozen or so locations. This one seemed different. We had someone who claimed to hear things, see dark shadows, and even watch what he described as a creeping figure come toward him, only to disappear once they were face to face. Yeah, this was going to be good. So commence pre-show ritual. This was SSPI after all. So to summarize, we drank a lot. So this place was a slaughterhouse. I'll ask you to think about that for a bit. What comes to mind? Yes, me too. Bloody meat hanging from the rafters, troughs filled with blood, furnaces burning the blood off of tenderloins, T-bones, porterhouse cuts, and the like. Well, it wasn't like that. Not a bit. The room where the business took place was way in the back of the building, very small. When you walked into the front, it looked more like a retail store than anything. They had books, bread, toys, and glass counters with animal products wrapped up. It's a very professional operation. When Pikes' contact saw him, he excitedly ushered him and us behind the counter. Apparently the scary part was nowhere near the butchered animals. The dark energy lived in the basement. Of course, I blurted out, not entirely meaning to. I gave a look to Wolo, motioning the bottle I had in my left hand. "Gotta pull it back a bit," I said, barely getting it out before we both started laughing. After we started trailing the laughter off, I looked at Pike's friend, who never told us his name now that I think of it. He wasn't laughing. He merely said, "Look, there's no history of a girl getting suffocated down here by an 1800 serial killer. There's no documented history of Ouija board use or a portal open to hell down here. It's just, well, bad. Now, Pikes, I know you want to. I just ask you to use extreme caution." And with that, Wolo and I weren't laughing anymore. In fact, he wasn't even by me. I looked at Pikes, who was talking to his friend, saying something like, "Thanks again for letting us mess around down here." I did hear him say it wouldn't be too long. I got eyes with Pikes when his bud left. He was still excited about this. "That sounds, pretty wild, man. This might actually get some results," I said to him. Pikes raised his eyebrows and bit his lip. "Yeah, I've never seen him that serious before." As he said that, his buddy opened the cellar door that led to the basement. Pikes and I cheered with our beers, but not like literally raising her arms and yelling. "Wait," he said. "Where's the big dummy?" referring to Wolo. I told him he'd been right there with me when the monologue began about how dangerous the basement is. As I was about to continue my sentence, I heard creepy laughing in the other room. Not the basement, but on our level. Pikes and I looked at each other. "Go time," he said. "Dude, did you hear that? I think it was..." As I slinked into the other room, I saw Wolo and I almost threw up. He was talking with one of the other employees I hadn't seen earlier. She must have just shown up. She looked like... Well, do you remember Mimi from the Drew Carey show? Wolo was notorious for hitting on anything with a pulse. You would probably hump a chair if it had a heartbeat. Maybe not. The worst thing was, I think she was chewing tobacco. Well, Pikes and I shared a look and then tried to stifle our laughs. "Hey, you just want to leave him out of this one," I said, knowing at this point there was no redeeming Wolo for a ghost hunt. Pike shook his head up and down, holding his mouth with his giant hands to stop him from audibly laughing. "Good," I snickered. "Right then, let's go." Immediately, the tone shifted. We weren't in Kansas anymore. We weren't in a slaughterhouse anymore. We were in what looked like the basement of a house set in the Blair Witch Project. It was eerie. Getting right to business, Pike started an EVP session. I started to record a video using my phone. Pike cleared his throat. "Anyone here? If anyone is here, say your name or make some of them move or something." I looked at him, squinting my eyes and scrunching my nose. What the hell was that? We've done this before. "Dude," Pike said, "something just feels weird. Sorry, it just caught me off guard." I understood. It was different. Much different than we'd ever encountered. "Hey, no sweat, man, just..." What the hell was that? Something just moved right by my ear. As I tried to whip around to tell Pikes what had happened, I couldn't find him. I couldn't see either. It was already a little light, but now it felt like I was blind. My phone. Thank you, brain. I fumbled for what felt like hours, finally turning the flashlight on. It illuminated the space, thankfully. And with it I found Pikes, kneeling. "Hey, you okay?" He nodded, acknowledging my question but not answering. I told him something felt like it just ran past me. He kept his position, not moving. Now, getting concerned, I wanted to grab his arm and maybe say, "Let's call this whole thing off." "Hey, big guy, maybe this one's..." "Get the gun." Both Pikes and I flew onto our asses, respectively. It wasn't gentle either. Like something pushed us both at the same time. Like something physically pushed us. Besides the fact that two grown men were seemingly just tossed to the ground like children, the voice I heard was loud. Ear-splittingly loud. Without thinking, I asked him to replay the last minute of his recording. Without asking, he did. We both sat in silence, waiting to hear what I thought I'd heard. The replay told a very different story. I did indeed hear what I thought, and judging by Pike's face, he heard it as well. "Get the gun. The gun," an otherworldly voice whispered. Whispered? No way. I heard the voice of God. I think he did too. Stupidly, we were both carrying guns that night. No one, including law enforcement, is allowed to be carrying a handgun or any gun while under the influence. The realization that something was actually here made my blood freeze. Speaking of blood, that's what I saw. I yelled for Pikes. I yelled for Wolo. No response. Now in full panic mode, I found the stairway. Climbed toward the top in slow motion. A black mist appeared. I don't know if it was human. I'm sure it wasn't. The head of this thing appeared to grow horns. That's the last thing I remember. Waking up, I was in the vehicle that brought us to the slaughterhouse. I groggily made my way to the door. It was locked. I looked at my phone and called Waldo and Pikes. Nothing. I texted. Again, nothing. Then a text notification popped up. "What did you do?" my wife asked. I tried to respond, but my hands had gone numb. I don't know, is all I could think. I said at the beginning that my friends died, but I don't know for sure. I've never seen them again. I've never told anyone about this. Don't know where I am at this moment, if you're reading all this. I ran. I should have done the right thing and turned myself in, even though I pray that I had nothing to do with their disappearance. But again, I don't know anything for sure. I'm just sorry it ended like this. To my friends and family, this was not your fault. I hope I'll see you again in another life.
Scared Straight by J. Beardify. Every editor I've spoken to has rejected this story. People don't like to read a bunch of sad facts without any conclusion, a traditional newspaperman scoffed, puffing on his cliché cigar and brushing his comb over. I mean, that's all you got here, really. Just a bunch of freaky coincidences. Fact checkers would have a field day with this, the director of a reputable magazine typed in her rejection email. Where's your proof? My contact at a hip blog denied my submission by text message. I can't post this. Everyone's moved on from the whole missing teen craze. It's just not trending. Sorry. So here I am, in this corner of the internet, the last refuge of the mad, the terrified, and the desperate to be believed. And I'm starting to think I might be all three. A while back I did a piece on youth runaways. In it I wrote about how I found and gained the trust of teens who didn't want to be found, from crust punk buskers to anonymous victims living in big city shelters far from home. I guess that was what attracted Saul Blankenship's attention. Saul and his wife Paula were at the end of the rope with their daughter Esther. An honors student in middle school, she started hanging out with a different crowd her sophomore year. When Esther was 14, her parents were already taking her for college visits and discussing full academic scholarships. By the time she was 17, they were praying that she could stay clean for just one whole month. We gave her everything, Saul told me in a tearful phone call. Everything. She spit it back in our faces. You can't imagine the helplessness, the frustration. Your kid who you took for pony rides and cheered for in school plays, slamming her door and screaming, "I hate you," then sneaking out to shoot up with a bunch of... Paula and Saul had tried therapy and rehab. Neither worked. The hard truth was it was doubtful that Esther was going to graduate, and her parents only had money for one more solution. It was this or nothing. Well, the more extreme the method, the more it appealed to us, Paula confessed later. The more they promised, the more we believed. And that's how they found Last Stop Academy. Scare your kid straight before it's too late. Our intensive program offers a secure location free of dangerous temptations. We give your troubled teen a greater purpose. You'll never see them the same way again. That's our promise to you, a 100% success rate. Yes, concerned parents, you read that right, 100%. No dropouts, no runaways, no escapes. The transformation we provide is complete, guaranteed and final. For more information, email or call. Well, it sounded just like what Esther needed, Paula sobbed. So we called, paid, got everything set up. All the reviews, all those pictures of successful, smiling kids. Well, it seemed legitimate. Paula hesitated. Well, of course, we had some misgivings. When I saw that unmarked black van pull up in front of our house, I almost called the whole thing off. But the woman on the phone had said last-minute jitters were normal. And besides, we were doing this for Esther. What were we supposed to do? Let her overdose and die? Well, the woman on the phone at Last Stop Academy had told Saul and Paula exactly what to expect. They would sign forms and send copies of all Esther's information to the contact email. Once received, Esther's new tutors would pick her up. Well, they said the pickup experience would be intense. I guess I just didn't realize how intense. It was like a burglary. I mean, these huge guys in ski masks, all of them, and paramilitary gear. They scared the bejesus out of me, and Paula coming up the stairs with those big flashlights. And Esther, she didn't even have a chance to scream. One of them kicked in her bedroom door, and they got the zip ties on her before she knew what was happening. I guess they had problems with kids trying to make a run for it. Saul paused here during our interview, as though the next part was especially painful. They put a bag over her head, he whispered in a small voice. I guess that's so their parents don't have to look them in the eye when they... At this point, he broke down in tears. You have no idea how desperate a parent has to be to agree to something like this. Paula stepped in, squeezing Saul's hand. No idea at all. On the printout of the website that Saul and Paula showed me, the program was described as no contact for the first 6 weeks. This, it was claimed, was meant to give your troubled teen a fresh start and cut ties to the old bad habits. For Saul and Paula, it meant months of anxious waiting. Their nervousness turned to alarm when 7 weeks passed with no word from Esther, and then 8. Well, no one responded to our calls, Paula explained. By the 9th week, the phone number was disconnected, and even the website was gone. All we had was this printout to show the police. Well, to make matters worse for the Blankenships, Esther's 18th birthday came just a few weeks into the investigation. Well, with Esther legally an adult and no evidence to go on, the case was closed. The police were very judgmental. Paula snorted. One even said that after what we'd done, it was no surprise that Esther had decided to go no contact. God, as if he would have done better in our place. Saul and Paula Blankenship felt like their daughter had dropped off the face of the earth. They were sure something terrible had happened, but the police had good reason to believe their claims. Just as the Last Stop Academy website had promised, there were examples of highly successful young men and women who'd attended and were willing to vouch for the program. What they couldn't provide, however, were any details. When I tracked down several of these picture-perfect specimens, they could only describe their experience as transformative and unbelievable. The parents of these individuals also refused to comment. Just as the newspaperman, the journalist, and the blogger had said, I was left with no story. Just a few model young adults, a closed rehab center, and a missing girl. But maybe I had something more. Browsing some of the support forums I'd found during my search for the Last Chance alumni, I found other parents with stories like Paula and Saul Blankenships. The names of the academy changed to the Free and Clear Institute, the Brighter Tomorrow Retreat, the New Me program, but every parent had a similar story. A legitimate-looking website, a mysterious woman on the phone, a black van, zip ties, a face covered by a cloth bag, and then nothing. The website goes dark, the phone number stops working, a handful of testimonials to throw the police off track, and a disappearance that can't be solved. I began looking for those websites myself. I found it wasn't hard if I just copy-pasted the same old text into the search bar. Camp Restart. Scare your kid straight before it's too late. Our intensive program offers a secure location free of dangerous temptations. We give your troubled teen a greater purpose. Sometimes the text was exactly the same. Other times it was given a religious slant or a more military tone, but the message didn't change. We're your last hope, it exclaimed, and success is guaranteed. Just look at all those feel-good testimonials. If whoever or whatever was behind the disappearances had a weakness, it was there, in the success stories. I have to admit it was tedious calling one law student or medical resident after another, only receiving one-word answers, tracking down their relatives. But finally, it panned out. The single dad of a New Me program alumni mentioned a strange thing. Sure, his kid had mentioned completing some program, but he'd never been a troubled youth. The worst you could say about the young man was that he'd been fairly average. Well, juvenile records are sealed, of course, but a deep dive into the social networks of each success story revealed a similar pattern. These prosperous young adults had never been addicts, deviants, or violent criminals. Instead, what they had in common was stunning mediocrity, as well as a nice boost at the opportune moment. A scholarship to an elite university, a partnership at a renowned law firm, a windfall of investment for a startup. Had each of these so-called successes been bribed into vouching for a treatment they'd never completed, maybe never even heard of? I only knew of one exception to the rule, and he had contacted me. In journalism, it's generally good practice to be wary of sources that seem too eager to participate or divulge information. Perhaps even more so in this case, as the young man in question had a history of violence and mental illness. As if that weren't enough, he contacted me on a dark web forum with content so sickening I still have nightmares about it. And yet, despite all my misgivings, I agreed to meet him. I couldn't let go of the possibility that maybe, just maybe, this mysterious treatment group had a success rate of 99.9 instead of 100%. Like the parents of the missing teens, however, I began to have second thoughts at the last minute. I usually make contacts for the first time in public places. This one wanted to climb into my car on a deserted country road at an odd hour. Furthermore, he wanted me to go with him to a second location, where he claimed the Last Stop Academy had been. My heart was pounding as I parked in a lonely gravel pull-off, nothing but trees and swamp in every direction. How could my contact even arrive at such a place, much less on time? I sighed, sipped my coffee, and got ready for a long wait. But I felt the needle against my neck before I even knew he was in the car. My contact had slipped into the back seat without me noticing and reached up with a gloved hand to slap my mirror off kilter. That's all I knew of him. A gloved hand, a stained coat sleeve, and the musty old sweat smell of homelessness. "Drive where I tell you," he rasped, "and don't you dare look back." I followed his directions to a shack-like structure beside a cell phone tower. When he forced me out of the car at needlepoint and marched me up its gravel drive, I was sure I'd been kidnapped by a maniac. My only hope was to play into his delusion until I could escape. At the padlocked door to the bland building, I felt him push cold metal into my hands, a pair of bolt cutters. For a moment I considered beating my contact kidnapper upside the head with the heavy tool and making a run for it. But I was too afraid of what might be on that needle. And besides, I was curious. I had to know. Once the lock was cut, a different tool was pressed into my palm, a flashlight. I turned it on and stepped into the empty, concrete-floored space. There was nothing there, except a metal hatch on the floor, almost like a submarine hatch. My contact motioned to it. "Do you have any idea how hard this is, man?" he snarled. "Just being here again. My head. It's like my head's gonna explode." He bent double, clutching his skull. If I had wanted to make a run for it, I had my chance. Instead, I stooped to open the hatch. My contact pulled himself together and yanked the flashlight from my hand. With the light shining in my eyes, he was just another vague shadow that blended in with the rest. He gestured again to the hatch, where a ladder descended into a circular concrete pipe as wide as a person. "You first." The sheer concrete tunnel was deeper than I'd imagined. I figured it must be some sort of fire escape, but for what? I stepped off the last rung and waited for my contact to reveal our surroundings. We were standing in a bare concrete corridor. For some reason, its width and length reminded me of a hospital hallway. Clutching his skull with one hand, my contact kidnapper led the way with the jittery beam of his flashlight, which bounced from one bare surface to another. Lightless and doorless rooms opened on either side of the corridor, which stretched onward into darkness. God, I hated those rooms. I hated not knowing what was in the blackness beyond their doorways until we got close. I was terrified by the thought of what might be lurking in their corners, and yet each room was empty except for a drain in the floor. The room smelled faintly of bleach, and for some reason that unremarkable fact terrified me more than anything else I'd seen so far. To make matters worse, my contact was growing more unstable as we progressed. After we passed the first room, he began to groan and sway from side to side. By the fourth, he was moaning in anguish. It got so bad that I begged him to turn around, but my contact kept moving forward, even when he was practically crawling down that lightless concrete hallway. Oh, the corridor might have felt infinite, but before long I could see the walls drop away on either side. We were approaching some kind of large chamber. My contact reached it before I did, and before I could see what was inside, he dropped to his knees and began to scream. It was the most heart-rending, ear-piercing scream I'd ever heard. It echoed in the corridor and strange rooms, all the way up the pipe we'd come down, and it seemed to go on forever. He dropped the flashlight, which flickered and then went out. I lost it. I forgot all about journalistic integrity or even the basic responsibilities of a human being. I snapped on my phone's light and fled to the ladder without even a look backward for my screaming, helpless companion. I no longer cared who he was or even if he made it out of there. A primal part of my mind had decided that I could take no more, and I fled. Days passed before I even dared to just drive past the cell phone tower and anonymous little shack again. When I did, I found something unusual. The concrete slab of the shed was higher than it had been, as though a new floor had been poured to cover something up. Maybe something like a metal hatch in an underground compound. It was either that or I'd dreamed the whole thing. My contact never resurfaced on any forums, and without him I had no support for any claim that that sterile, lightless complex even existed. And so there. You have it. A story that no one wants. Just a fistful of fake rehab centers, missing teens, and unanswered questions. I've had a lot of late nights since then. The kind of nights when my desk lamp seems like the only light on in the whole city. Rain gusts tauntingly against my window, and not even the whiskey will put me to sleep. On nights like that, I think about Esther Blankenship and all those other missing teens. I scroll through the latest batch of eerily similar websites, ready to disappear again once they've collected their human harvest. So where do all these missing teens go? Who takes them and why? How many of those strange facilities are there, and what happens inside of them? Well, your guess is as good as mine. Sometimes I wonder why I'm the only one investigating this, why no one else has made these connections. It makes me feel crazy, or like I might be in danger. From who or what, I couldn't say. Or maybe it's the lack of sleep, but ever since I visited that underground structure with my contact, I felt uneasy. I keep seeing the same cars over and over, even parked on my street at night. And then there's that feeling when I walk in the door like someone's been inside my house while I was out. Maybe I really am losing it, but I've got to keep investigating. Got to get the word out. I'm a journalist after all, it's what I do. In the meantime, please parents, be careful where you send your troubled teens. If you're not careful, you might never see your child again.
Tasting Forbidden Fruit by Corpse Child. When you look for a place to live, you take a few things into consideration. Cost of living, mortgage costs, price of utilities, all that jazz, right? Most of the time, you might not exactly take too much in mind when it comes to shit like the people or folklore in the neighborhood, would you? At least, not when you're me, a 25-year-old scrub who's just looking for a way out of his first apartment that won't force him to smash his piggy bank, right? So yeah, okay. I've been on a search for places to move into for at least the better part of 2 or 3 weeks. So far, thanks to today's economy tap dancing around its grave along with the rest of society, I guess it's no real surprise that every house there looked like the realtor must have had a stroke right after he hit the finger on his 0 key. That's when it came to places here in town. Eventually I had the bright idea to look outside my town, specifically in an area in the mountains in Terrace County called Grenview Pines. Now, let me tell you that when I first saw the place, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I mean, When you think of dream vacations, you think of scenic areas that look like you'd be able to just ride along through and feel as though you were actually there just from looking at it for too long. You know? Somewhere where you wouldn't want to leave, right? Well, my friend, in that regard, look no further than Glenview Pines. I swear I actually had to take a moment to make sure the pictures I was seeing of the place weren't just a bunch of stock images ripped from some jackass's background wallpaper. Now, obviously my first reaction was, yeah, sure, it's pretty and all. What are the prices going to be like? Can't be affordable, can it? Well, my friend, in that regard, let me once more say, look no further than Grandview Pines. The first house I saw on the market was $3,600 with only a $750 down payment. But I couldn't believe my eyes, seriously. And this is what you'd call a dream house. Going back briefly to what I was saying earlier about trying to get the hell out of my cramped ass apartment as quickly as I could, understand that I really was desperate to get out, given that rent was coming due and my shitheel ex-roommate decided to flake on me to move back in with his parents without having the common courtesy to at least leave me his half of the rent for the coming month. While I wasn't broke yet, I wouldn't have had the money to pay it up on time, and I sure as hell wasn't about to incur a late fee. Oh, you have no idea how much extra is added onto the already blown out of the ass price. So, you see now why I might have been a little more eager than perhaps I should have been to immediately dive into this head first, no questions asked. So I called the number for the realtor's office. 2 days later, I was on my way up into the mountains. I can't express enough just how amazing Grandview Pines looked driving up the mountain range. The pictures were accurate, sure enough, yet at the same time were nowhere near able to show off the beauty of the place. I think of every picture you've seen where your friends are chilling up in the mountains, and you see them commenting about how beautiful the scenery is. Now I want you to imagine yourself in a place that will put those pictures to shame. That was Grandview. The colours were bright, alive, and all around welcoming. The sun shone over the peak of the mountain range with a smile on its face that may well have said, "Welcome to Grandview Pines," cheesy as that sounds. It was true, though. I was driving through a dream spot, and I was going to be able to call it home. I ended up actually arriving at the spot of the new neighbourhood 10 minutes later than I was supposed to, simply because I couldn't help but go and slowly drive through a few of the different trails. When I arrived in the neighbourhood, I found that it was a slightly more secluded one, choked off all around by the trees, with only about 2 or 3 houses on either side of the road. A quiet neighbourhood, I figured. Perfect. No loud-ass roommates or next-door neighbours keeping me up at 2 and 3 in the morning. Well, I'll say right now, that was a damn lie. Anyway, I pulled up to the house I was moving into, and again, for the criminally low price I was supposed to pay for it, I was pleasantly surprised at the small yet welcome-looking house I was set to move into. The realtor was standing there on the porch waiting for me. The two of us got to take a tour of the house, where I was shown and told all of where the appliances and circuit breakers were, as well as where the cellar was. Admittedly, the place needed a bit of work on the inside compared to the outside, and that was more than fine with me. The conversation between myself and the realtor was unremarkable, though at one point I'd asked if the neighbourhood had any sort of reputation or if the residents were fans of new arrivals. I was told that, for the most part, the people in the area had always been rather friendly and welcoming to new arrivals. Afterwards, the two of us left and scheduled a second meet-up to finalise the purchase of the house for the next week. That week came and went, spent mostly with me packing up everything I could take with me and selling what I wasn't going to be able to. And I was soon the proud owner of 1568 Clearwater Drive, Grandview Pines. That first night I spent in the new house, I remember I didn't even bother much with any shit like unpacking boxes, save for a few things and the stuff I'd picked up from the grocery store on the way. No, that night was spent just out on the road, enjoying the scenery some more. I really just couldn't get enough. I actually stayed out until it got dark, so much so that even the high beams of my SUV barely lit up the path in front of me. I couldn't have imagined trying to walk through this place at night. I slowly returned to the house, where I scoffed down a quick hungry man steak and mashed potatoes dinner before crashing for the night. When I woke up the next morning, I was getting up for the bathroom when I heard a knock on my door. A bit confused, only ever having been used to invited visits back at the apartment, I went and looked through the peephole to see a middle-aged couple standing at the door with a fruit basket. Weird. Hello? I greeted, opening the door. Well, hey there, newbie, the man exclaimed with a sort of Midwestern accent. His wife, also Midwestern and hyper-enthusiastic, chimed in. We just wanted to come by and say congratulations on the move-in. Well, you're going to love it here. Such a beaut, Grandview Pines, ain't it? Sure, I replied awkwardly. Well, we just wanted to drop by and give you a warm welcome, neighbor. She held up the fruit basket. Oh, and you don't want to forget this. I smiled and chuckled. Oh, thank you. I guess I should have something on my stomach before I stopped, seeing the worried looks growing rapidly on their faces. What? Oh, you don't eat those there, pal, said the man. Okay, then what do you do with them? Well, you leave them out on your front porch. Here, see. The wife pointed to the small side table on my porch. Oh, so they're, decorative, I asked, still confused as to why the hell they were so worked up over that. Well, sort of like that, yeah, the man said, chuckling nervously. I chuckled just as nervously while setting the basket down on the table. We exchanged brief goodbyes after that, and I went back inside to cook a proper breakfast, sort of. Bacon and pancakes that had been drowned in whipped cream and chocolate syrup. So much for eating healthy. After breakfast, I decided to go a little further into Terrace County, both to get to know and feel the area a bit more, and as an excuse to get myself lost in the scenery again. I spent most of the afternoon on this. Terrace County itself is a pretty small area, so it didn't take long, maybe 2.5 hours tops, before I'd seen everything in the town. Now, Grandview Pines, on the other hand, that was where the majority of time was spent after I'd grabbed lunch at one of the diners. Oddly, as beautiful as the mountain and its trails are, I was surprised when I noted the distinct lack of other patrons walking the trail. I mean, small town, sure, but still, I would have thought there'd be more people, at least tourist-wise, you know. Well, anyway, 4:30, 5, I headed back home where the fruit basket was still sitting on the side table on the porch. I wonder. I took one of the grape stalks that stuck out from the right side of the basket. They looked, felt, and smelled real. The next thing was to try crushing one of them, which I did, and sure enough, it was a real grape all right. So, okay, then why in the hell were those two yahoos so skittish? Getting kind of hungry, I decided to help myself to the rest of the grapes on that vine and an apple while I went inside to start making actual supper. I just put my tater tot casserole into the oven when I started hearing something pounding outside. It was light, faint, and I almost didn't even notice it at all. When I started listening further, however, I noticed that there were not only sounds of thumping like hooves, but there was more than one of them. About 10 or more by the sound of it, in fact. I ignored it at first. Then more and more came in quick succession. I went to the window then to see what was making the noise, and instantly had to shield my eyes. All I could catch in the split second my eyes were open was a bright wall of ivory light that I swear was 2 seconds from turning my eyeballs into molten slag right in the sockets. The hoofbeats were deafening too. My heart actually skipped 2 or 3 beats, and my ears rang like crazy for hours following. This is where things started to get a little weird because, while I was pretty sure it only lasted about half a minute to a minute and a half tops, I came out of my little hysteria to find that almost 20 minutes had passed and the kitchen was full of smoke, with the smoke detector screaming bloody murder in my ears. I got up and went back to the window to open it, while also turning on all the fans. When I opened the windows, everything outside was as quiet and calm as it could be. If I wasn't busy hacking up my lungs and frustratingly throwing the charred carcass of my casserole out the frickin' window, I'd have probably spent the next few hours wondering just what the hell that was, and how the hell 20 minutes just skipped like that. As it was, I ended up just throwing a sandwich together and calling it quits there. Stranger still was the fact that, despite being perfectly wide awake earlier and making just a regular sandwich, I ended up feeling extremely drowsy right after the 5th bite of my food. It's like each bite put me further and further to sleep. Finally, I did pass out on my couch, and I was out colder than if I'd been hit over the head with a baseball bat. Not only that, but I seemed to be almost lucidly dreaming, if that makes any sense at all. Now to explain, you know how sometimes when you're asleep and you may not realize you're asleep, you'll be in a dream so vivid that, no matter how bizarre it appears, you'd swear it was real. A sort of dream where you can actually feel, hear, and maybe even smell everything around you, and or anything that happens to you. If you've ever had something like that happen, you'll know what I'm talking about here. In my case, I was in a dream where I was surrounded all around by walls of white. No landforms, no land to speak of, actually no windows or anything. Just an empty white space that looked to stretch until the end of time. I remember feeling absolutely numb when I was like this as well, having lost all senses of touch, or at least to anything I tried touching. That is to say, nothing at all. I had that weird sort of tingly feeling you get when your hand or foot falls asleep all throughout your body. All around me, the walls glimmered with this radiant sort of tinkling. Imagine the Ivory City from the Never-Ending Story 2, but without any of the actual city, just the glimmering walls from the structures. That's the best sort of comparison I've got for it. It was when I started hearing the hoofbeats again that my heart pounded furiously. They echoed from all around me. I saw my head in every direction, but I couldn't see a damn thing. I heard what sounded like a combination of wolves howling and horses whinnying, joining this, well, closer. 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 Growls and whines from horses and wolves came right on top of me. The glimmering light got brighter and brighter. I was forced to shield my eyes like I did back in the kitchen. But somehow the sounds kept coming even closer still. I heard one last chorus of the horse-wolf hybrid noises before a deep but soft and gentle voice told me, "Don't open your eyes, or you'll never see again." When he spoke, I noticed that the sounds had stopped again. Before I could even get the breath to begin asking who the hell was talking, I heard what sounded like a knife being pulled from a slot on the chopping block. My body seized up hearing this. "Now this'll be painful," he said in a voice as gentle as a yogi. "Do not open your eyes. Endure, and you'll wake up just fine." My mouth must have been hanging open in place of my eyes because the next thing I knew, I heard him tell me, "Do not speak, else we may remove your tongue as well. Endure, and you'll wake up just fine, child." And for the record, had he not told me that, I wouldn't have spoken per se, probably just would have screamed. Regardless, preferring to keep both my tongue and my eyes right where they were, I did exactly as I was told. "And lastly, child, do not move, no matter how much you feel so inclined, else your limbs will be stripped from you." That forced my body to seize up even harder, almost locking up entirely. "Are you ready to receive penance?" Penance? In another instant, a cold swipe from something thin and sharp was swept across my chest. It was quick, but like how you may not notice at first when you cut your hand on something, usually out of adrenaline, like it was with me, or because you just weren't paying attention, it wasn't until a few seconds later that the searing pain started kicking in. Then another swipe came across my right cheek, this one immediately triggering the pain. Then another, and another. One right after the other, from my chest to my arms and legs, all across my face and eventually to my groin. Obviously, that was when I couldn't take it anymore and I had to scream. For an instant after doing so, everything went completely still, with an icy chill hitting my face. Suddenly something started burning at the root of my tongue. It was slow, too, intimate and searing. Imagine having a tooth pulled out without anesthetics, and now imagine that it's not a tooth, but your whole frickin' tongue, and imagine that whoever's doing it is in no real hurry to pull it out, instead taking their time so you feel every second of the misery. I can't say exactly how long this was going on for. Trust me, when you're in that much pain, you tend to lose track of shit like time. Finally, though, I did feel something of a pop and a flood of blood filling my mouth. Before I could react in any manner, the voice spoke again. "You had not heeded our warning. You may now not speak again. Yet you may now as well never again taste forbidden fruit. You may now go and speak no more, child. May this be a lesson to you." And then everything went black. When everything came back, I sat up and found myself in my kitchen again. The sun was shining through the window. I swung my head in every direction, feeling everything in sight just so I could make sure I wasn't still asleep. Getting back to my feet, I looked at my phone, which I'd left on the counter when I was making supper, to find that it was 3 in the afternoon. 3 days later. I was about to shout, "What the fuck?" when I got hit with another nasty surprise. My mouth felt empty. A hollow hole. I tried to make pronounced sounds and realized that my fucking tongue was gone. Panic rolled right through me like a 150-mile-an-hour express train. I spent the next minute and a half clawing like a lunatic at the inside of my mouth, only to realize that it was worthless. It was gone. I couldn't talk, taste, or anything. God, what the fuck happened? Why is my tongue missing? I looked out the window to see the fruit basket gone. Where did the fruit basket go? It hit me then. You had not heeded our warning. Now you may not speak again. Yet you may now as well never again taste forbidden fruit. That made me immediately think back to meeting with the neighbors that morning. They told me that the fruit wasn't for me to eat. They said it was decorative, so to speak. Naturally, I wanted to ask them what the hell that was, who the voice was, and just what the fruit really was to them. Unfortunately, without my tongue, I couldn't easily do that, not directly anyways. It wasn't until the end of that next day that they actually visited my house again, bringing yet another fruit basket. I remember opening the door, my face probably looking like I'd seen a ghost. Well, more like seen and felt. "Well, good morning, neighbor," the man cheered, just like he did last time. "We saw that you hadn't put out your offering basket for tonight, so we wanted to drop by and make sure you were set." I looked down at the basket. Oh yeah. I attempted, sounding every bit the dummy I was now. They cocked their eyebrows at me. I opened my mouth to try and cry out, bleed, something, but all I could manage was a pathetic moaning sort of sound. "Are you okay there, darling?" asked the wife. I continued feebly, trying to talk. Finally, I opened my mouth and gestured for them to look inside, wherein their eyes bugged in absolute horror. "Oh my God, what happened?" "You had your offering basket out last night, right?" I nodded. "You don't think an animal might have gotten to it, do you?" I shook my head and picked up one of the fruits from the new basket and pretended to eat it. Both of them grimaced before the man exclaimed, "Damn it all. We told you those weren't for eating. Oh, Lord, son." I pleaded incoherently. Fortunately enough, probably this not being their first rodeo, as evidenced by the fact they immediately knew it had something to do with the damn fruit basket, they were able to understand me enough when I tried speaking from that point on. That said, from what they told me, there was no way to actually reverse what had been done to me. When I asked them the best I could about what the hell it was that took my tongue and the fruit basket in the first place. The man said, "Grandview Pines is a beautiful place, no doubts about that, but an old and mysterious place with old and mysterious things that have walked this mountain for thousands of years or more. Of these is one we like to call the Passing Hunter." He went on to explain to me that the Passing Hunter was an old sort of Celtic-based entity that was once known for butchering anyone that would be stupid enough to dare cross any of the trails here on the mountain. That was until one day, one bold SOB managed to actually strike a deal with the guy in exchange for freedom of safe travel and lodging on the mountain, that every night each resident, at least of his neighborhood, why this in particular I couldn't tell you, would provide a fruit basket for him, as apparently he was fond of fresh fruit but couldn't pick it his damn self. The couple left after that, as it was getting dark again. That was just a week ago. Since then, I haven't missed a single night of setting a fruit basket out. God knows I never will again after that night. Whether I manage to stay here or find another place to stay, not that it really makes much difference anymore. In that time, I've been trying everything I can to search for information online I can find about the Passing Hunter. Just as my luck would have it, there's absolutely freaking nothing. Obviously, this is part of why I'm writing this here. This and the fact that I literally can't tell anyone in person. I need help. I need answers. Other than a mysterious god or whatever that stalks this neighborhood in Grandview Pines. Who or what the hell is the Passing Hunter? Whoever he is, one thing I know is for certain. Never ever go one night without leaving a full, untouched fruit basket out for him if you live in Grandview Pines. If you do, I don't even think God himself could actually help you.
Where one wound heals, another one opens, by A.P. Royal. Mallory was late. It was nearly 2 hours past their court-ordered pickup time. Josie and Allie were getting antsy, their stuffed teddies in hand and backpacks stuffed to the brim. "Did Mama forget?" "No, Allie," I lied. She's just running a bit late." With their bedtime quickly approaching, we putzed around the lobby while I pondered what to do. 6 phone calls went straight to voicemail. I sighed heavily, my mind jumping to the most terrifying but logical conclusion. I decided. She didn't leave me much of a choice. "Okay, kids, I've got a surprise." There was a temporary glimmer in their bored, glazed-over eyes. "Yeah, surprise sleepover with Nanny." Allie grinned, letting out a cheer. Josie rolled her eyes. Under her breath, she whispered, "Oh, I guess she really did forget." After a quick phone call to Grandma, the kids were sent upstairs to change into their pajamas and unpack their things. Grandma dropped everything and was over in less than 20 minutes. I graciously hugged her goodbye, leaving some money on the counter for late-night snacks. "Leon," she called out as I slipped on my jacket. "Yes, Mom." "Be careful." The highway did its best to try and soothe the tumultuous swirl of thoughts in my mind. The roads were peaceful and the radio turned off. Street lamp after street lamp, exit after exit. I tried my best to clear my mind, to remain calm. It was difficult because late-night driving had always been a time for reflection, and the ghosts from the past kept resurfacing. "Oh, it was an honest mistake. It's fine. She's just forgotten." I paid the toll and passed through the turnpike. All the while, the lump in my throat never settled. This was her week. She never missed a week without some kind of notice, especially considering how hard she'd battled for custody and all the progress she'd made. There was no way in hell she'd jeopardize everything. The gate at Scenic Acres was wide open. It was rusted and weathered, well past its time, like many of its residents. It was a quiet community, which was exactly why Mallory had chosen it. Fewer opportunities to get into trouble and fewer reasons to be out late. All the houses looked the same in the twilight. Cedar-shake rooftops and bungalow-style homes with faded vinyl siding in soft grey and blue tones. The car came to a crawl as I poked my head out of the window. I squinted to see the house numbers. 501, 503, 505. Once I turned the corner towards Mallory's place, I noticed the lights were off at 5:15. The street along the block was lined with cars. I parked down the road and walked towards the home, my heart fluttering. The doorbell buzzed. I waited another moment before ringing it again, knocking a few more times for good measure. "Mallory?" No response. I drifted towards the side of the house and peered into the window. One of the plants looked like it hadn't been watered in weeks. And was that a chair toppled over? The scene inside the house triggered the flashbacks. Her body on the floor in a puddle of vomit, shallow breathing before she faded out. Her eyes were seared in my memory forever, the emptiness within them completely vacant of life. I could do nothing but cry. She was gone. Well, somehow the paramedics had managed to pull off a miracle. They shocked the life back into her, pulling her back from a place unknown. All those seconds had felt like decades, whimpering in a heap beside her body. I was not going to let that happen again. I ran for the back gate and stood on my tippy toes, dangling my hands over the top. I fished for the carabiner, eventually fumbling it open with a satisfying click. The door swung open to reveal a jungle of grass. The wild blades swayed in a strange wave, riding the gust of wind. I shut the door to the backyard and hollered her name. Shorts had been a poor choice for the evening. The grass was sticky and a cloud of mosquitoes hovered around my body, latching onto any bit of exposed skin. I felt a pinch on my calf and swatted my leg in a feeble attempt to scare them off. "Mallory!" I cleared the corner, catching a glimpse of the faint glow coming from the basement. Stumbling up the back porch in a panic haste, I tried my luck with the doorbell again. I knocked aggressively, the thuds echoing in the night, but there was still no answer. Just as I prepared to send my elbow through one of the windows, the door creaked open. The darkness was endless beyond the door. I could barely make out the figure. If it wasn't for his bleach-dyed hair, he would have blended in with the sea of shadows. "What do you want?" the voice asked. "Where the fuck is Mallory? Chase, is she okay?" "She's fine, Leon. We're busy right now, though. I'll have her give you a call later tonight." As he closed the door, I wedged my arm into the gap. "She missed pickup, Chase. Her week was supposed to start today." "Oh, really?" he said with feigned sadness. "Oh, shit, I'm really sorry." You sure she's all right? The schedule isn't new. I had the kids all ready to go and everything. You should have seen their faces." He pushed, but I managed to wrestle the door open. The droopy figure of Chase stood there stupidly, helpless and out of breath. He looked like a toothpick, his bare chest sunken, his baggy cargo shorts barely hanging onto his bony hips. But it was his eyes that were most disturbing. They were a milky pink, like two partially sucked gumballs. It made me shudder as I walked into the home. For God's sake, I knew it. You two are using again. I stormed down the hall and into the darkness. "You're nothing but a goddamn junkie, Chase. God, I knew it. But I'm not letting you drag her down with you. Hey, Mallory, where are you?" "Get out of our house," Chase ordered, and suddenly I felt a hand claw at my neck in the dark. It felt clammy as I shrugged it off. As my eyes adjusted, I felt around the wall for a light switch. Before I could find it, I spotted the dull puddle of light creeping in from underneath the basement door. "Our house," I scoffed back, leaving him behind. "I paid for the frickin' thing." "Leon, leave," Chase pleaded, but I was already down the stairs. An odd funnel of air hit me. With every creaking step, it got progressively warmer. The air seemed to cling to my body like a layer of honey, carrying a gurgling stench of wet laundry. A sickly hissing sound could be heard from the dying furnace off in the distance. I could make out the source of the light now. Numerous candles were laid across the floor with no discernible pattern. Piercing red orbs of light were in every corner of the room. The heat lamps were radiating waves of sweltering heat that made the walls sweat. When I finally got to the bottom of the stairwell, she was lying there, face up. "Mallory!" I cried. She was stiff and unresponsive, her eyes rolling back in her skull. The floor was no longer concrete like I'd remembered. She lay on an earthy layer of sediment that was soft and squishy. The moisture from the soil wet my bare knees as I crouched over Mallory's body. I felt for a pulse, shocked by the scene that I'd prayed I would never relive. But she wasn't the only one. There were other bodies spread out haphazardly around the room. "Do not touch her," a voice commanded. "You are disrupting the process." "What did you do to her?" I screamed. "To all of them." I noticed, before he could answer, the dark bruises on Mallory's body were like pools of oil. They were dark islands along her alabaster white skin. The inky blotches ran up her thigh and across her abdomen. Rage began to erupt inside of me. "Me," he mocked. "I did nothing. Nothing at all. They, however, are doing us a service. Quite frankly, it's them you should be thanking. They're doing what you could never do." He pointed in Mallory's direction. "Oh, you son of a bitch," I growled. "Just look." I didn't see them at first. The fury was blinding my concentration. All I could think about was putting my fist through Chase's face. I'd wring his little neck out when all this was over, and if she didn't make it, then God help him, my rage would have no end. Mallory was still unresponsive. When I lifted her head up slightly, gently cradling it under my arm, only then did I see them start to sway. It was the same ripple effect that could be seen on a hot summer day, the sun's rays refracting off the pavement in a strange, wavy illusion. Their movement was the only thing that made them visible. It distorted the dim glow of the candlelight that washed over the basement. If you blinked too quickly, you could almost miss it. Tiny, angel-hair-thin strings of translucent fibers were undulating back and forth like the tall blades of grass in the wind. They were sprouting up from tiny pores on Mallory's skin, wriggling around in a hypnotic dance before dipping in and out of her like an animal at a watering hole. I couldn't tell whether they were coming or going, only that they were crawling all over her body. Acidy liquid came up out of my throat as I watched a group of them wiggle out of her eyes. I'd never made that sound before. It was akin to a yelp from a tiny dog. It escaped from my quivering lips and was met by a high-pitched hiss. "See what you've done now. You've angered them, you fool." Chase crept up alongside her body as I found myself further and further away. I could hear the little boy inside of me urging me to run. "What the fuck, Chase?" There was a knocking coming from the walls that I couldn't pinpoint in the shadows. Chase wrapped an elastic band around Mallory's arm and jabbed her with a syringe. The contents slowly drained out of the needle. The hissing intensified as the ripples became stronger. I could see the little hairs on their bodies as my eyes adjusted to their figure. They dived inside of her, in and out, sucking and sucking until they waved their thin frames from side to side in a temporary, triumphant jiggle before proceeding to feed again. I noticed now that the bruises seemed to be moving, ever so slightly. "Feast," Chase encouraged in a breathy whisper. "Take it all away. The chemicals, the toxins, the dependency." He laid down beside Mallory and strapped himself up before sinking a needle into his own arm. Another frenzy of loud knocks sent my gaze upwards. From the basement window above, I could see them pounding, desperately trying to get in. They were much more visible given the numbers of them crowded by the window. Their bodies were clear like jellyfish, their mouths twisting and turning, their tiny teeth spread out and swirling like the head of a beautiful flower. Long, puffy tubes of flesh that looked as big as your hand. It was enough to send me scampering up the stairs. Going off memory, I felt around the pitch-dark room. A picture frame tumbled from the wall, the glass shattering on impact. I felt an electric shock of pain as my hip collided with a bench in the foyer. It felt like an eternity before I finally found the knob to the front door. Once free from the house, I didn't breathe until I was back in my vehicle. It was a long ride home. I received a phone call a couple of hours later. Mallory was apologizing profusely, reassuring me that everything was okay. She was trying something new that seemed to be working. She promised to make it up to me and the kids. When she arrived the next morning, she looked amazing. Her hair looked fuller, her smile radiant. The bags under her eyes seemed gone, but the bruising was impossible to hide. There was a speckle of dark purple around her collarbone, sitting above the neckline of her cardigan. Yeah, I know it's a little, out of the box, Leon, but I'm telling you, it's been working like nothing else I've ever tried before. That gnawing feeling, you know, that urge that picks away at you, it's completely gone. It's been amazing. I finally feel free. Out of the box, I laughed. Did he tell you that he shot you up while you were passed out? God, I thought you were clean, Mallory. Hell, I thought you were dead. It's not okay. The kids were gathering up their things upstairs, their excited voices traveling down to the foyer. Jace was waiting in the car outside. Well, that's part of it, for now. At least until we build up enough clientele and have a large enough stable. I shot a puzzled look in her direction. What the fuck are you talking about, Mallory? A stable, you know. I guess you could call it our new business venture. And she smiled. It's not too late to invest. We already have a handful of clients, those people that you saw yesterday. She stopped by the front window and flashed an open palm to Chase, indicating 5 more minutes. He looked unimpressed. Anyways, Chase thinks it could get really big. We're looking into the potential market. Hopefully we can sell the bigger ones once they mature. Eventually they become too big for the detox process and become useless. We've just been housing them in the backyard until they eventually die. Bug farming's the next big thing, Leon. It's going to make big waves in the protein market. Well, I couldn't believe what I was hearing. At a loss for words, I just sighed. She leaned in and hugged me tightly. I suddenly felt warm. Look, thanks again for checking up on me last night. There was playful cooing coming from the top of the stairs, followed by frantic footsteps as the girls raced down. Right, grab your things and head to the car, Mallory ordered. They hugged me goodbye and ran to the vehicle. What exactly were those things anyway? I asked. Peering out the front window, Allie was showing Chase her brand new keyboard. To be honest, Leon, I don't know. I think some of them traveled back with me. You remember my ayahuasca retreat a couple of months ago? I nodded. The much-anticipated trip to Costa Rica. Just keep them away from the bugs, Mallory. I'm dead serious. Of course. And she smiled. Before she left, she gently clutched my arm. Thanks again. Seriously. She winked. I'll bring them back bright and early for you. Have a good week. She left before I could tell her. I wanted to tell her that my calf had swelled up last night. I wanted to tell her that the bruise had seemingly traveled to my thigh overnight. I wanted to tell her so many things. I woke up and I'm completely alone. By Samuel Hudson. The day started like any other. I woke up to the blaring of my alarm, violently pulling me from the happy dream world which gave a brief respite to the hustle and bustle of life. The morning sun pierced through the thin curtains as I pulled myself into a sitting position. It seemed to be a nice day, although my blurry vision prevented me from seeing anything else apart from the bright rays of sunshine. I reached towards my side table, picking up a pair of glasses and putting them on, blessing my vision with crisp clarity. After a brief round of stretches, I got up to go about my morning routine. It took me a while to realize how oddly quiet everything was, the realization clicking in my mind as I finished making myself breakfast. Although I don't live in an urban metropolis, the suburban English street that I lived on was oddly silent. No morning birds, not a single car, not even the unusual hum of distant traffic. Was I going deaf? Or perhaps some incident had occurred beyond my knowledge that had limited the usual loudness of the morning rush. I sat down on the sofa with a tray of breakfast on my lap as I turned on the TV. I was greeted with a broadcast of nothingness. A second oddity further grew the uneasy feeling that had sprung within the pit of my stomach. Complete silence on a Monday morning, coupled with no TV signal. Well, it doesn't take a great mind to realize that something was going on, likely in the realms of a large-scale incident. Maybe I'd slept through a disaster. I mean, not many disasters can befall a relatively small English city, but still, nothing's impossible. Thankfully, I still had an internet connection, although searching for local news turned up nothing major. On the contrary, it seemed like an extremely slow news day. The top story concerned a primary school's notable performance at a regional coding fair, and the rest of the article seemed overtly generic. I mean, nothing specific, and nothing published in the last 12 hours. Even posts on Twitter and Facebook seemed to avoid mentioning any information which would link posts to a specific date or location. It was at this point that I gave up on trying to find a specific incident. Instead, I continued getting ready for work while pretending that everything was normal. I got dressed, packed up my work laptop, and put on my shoes, all without hearing a single sound from the outside world. The seriousness and pure bizarreness of my predicament hit me when I opened the door. When you're inside, everything is naturally insulated. Even sounds from right outside your house seem distant, almost entirely separate from your own existence. I'd comforted myself with that barrier, but opening my front door and presenting myself naked to the greater world, a world, well, bordering between familiar and alien. The silence was somehow louder, the contrast from the usual cityscape noise becoming even more distinct. I stood motionless for a moment, slightly taken aback by an overwhelming sense of dread that thankfully passed after a few seconds. Looking around, I saw nobody, which, to be quite honest, I was expecting. More concerning, however, was the total normalcy of my street. Cars sat parked in their driveways, and nothing was out of place. For a moment, I was lost in thought, late-night History Channel conspiracies darting across my mind, the most prominent of which were aliens. The thought caused me to chuckle. Right, as if I was somehow special enough to be ignored or glossed over during an alien invasion or mass abduction. The ridiculousness of the idea slightly calmed me, and I walked next door to knock on my neighbor's door. No answer. Not even a single sound emanated from inside. My neighbor was a nice old lady, Mrs. West, yes, that's it. She was widowed and unemployed and often spent the mornings doing crosswords and cross-stitching. She had no reason to be out, and my knocks were loud enough to be heard throughout the entire house. Tentatively, I tried the handle, finding the door to be unlocked, quite surprisingly. I'm sure Mrs. West wouldn't mind me entering to check on her. After all, she'd done the same for me a few years ago when I came down with a terrible fever. With light steps, I made my way inside, the cozy hall of the two-bedroom home greeting me as warmly as usual. Mrs. West's house almost perfectly fit the stereotype of an old English lady, although I always thought she could do with a cat for company, an ugly, especially ugly cat, to complete the charming yet dated aesthetic. My search of the house turned up nothing of note. Everything was normal, too normal for my paranoid state of mind. Everything was neatly put somewhere. Nothing had been left out, not even a newspaper or a needle. My concern grew as I climbed the stairs, finding all the door bars on the first floor open. I checked each in turn, finding a similar lack of anything until I entered the final room, the closed door that led to the master bedroom. I slowly creaked the door open, hoping to find Mrs. West sound asleep in bed, having either forgotten to set the alarm or slightly under the weather with a cold. However, such a pleasant sight would not bless my eyes. Instead, a peculiar, no, an insane scene revealed itself. If you were to take a quick glance at the room, perhaps while walking past, you'd notice nothing out of the ordinary. Take a closer look, however, and its quirks would reveal themselves. I first noticed the bed, which seemed completely fine apart from the fact that all the pillows were neatly stacked at the foot of the bed. The bedding itself also seemed to be reversed, and looking around the room I noticed more oddities. The doorknobs to open the wardrobe were unaligned, and one was slightly smaller than the other. The mirror that Mrs. West would presumably use to put on her makeup sat on the floor, facing the wall directly behind it. A teddy bear, probably an antique at this point, sat within a fort of books taken from the now empty bookshelf. It was weird, bizarre, too bizarre. I wanted to leave, and I moved to do so rather quickly, but my movement was stopped by the sound of a car outside. My heart skipped a beat as I rushed towards the window, happy to see another sign of life in what seemed to me to be a dead city. It took a moment, but the sound of the noise edged into view from down the street. It was indeed a car, but something was off about it. Drove slowly, and estimated around 10 miles an hour. It didn't seem to be a make or model that I recognized, although it seemed to be a model from the late 70s or 80s. The windows were heavily tinted, and it possessed no plate numbers or logos anywhere on the body. I watched as it slowly rolled down the street, my body instinctively moving to mask my presence from the vehicle. As it approached my house, it slowed to a crawl and then a stop. For a full minute I watched the mysterious car, which filled me with a twinge of dread, idling outside my house. Finally, after seemingly a lifetime of bated breath, it began slowly rolling forward once more, all the way to the end of my street and turning right towards the city, disappearing from view. After calming my breath as best I could, I silently left Mrs. West's house, briskly jogging back towards my own. I unlocked the door, went inside, and locked it behind me. Well, I'm currently typing this out on my phone. I've tried calling the emergency services and family to no avail. I think I might be about to have a panic attack. I'm going to try and collect my thoughts and calm myself down. I definitely don't want to be caught out there in the open completely alone, but at the same time, that car seems to have taken an unusual interest in my house. I have no idea what to do, but I need to do something.
Icers of the Pocket Jungle by Scare in a Box. I refilled my coffee cup from the office's new state-of-the-art coffee maker and headed back to my workplace. It's the middle of my shift, so it's time for a caffeine and recharge. I sit in front of the monitor and look at the data it presents to me. Everything's in order. The tubes move perfectly and the various systems they have work correctly. The forest through which they move is in normal condition. Push one of the buttons and the data slides aside, showing me the forest outside the building, which everyone in my sector monitors all day, every day. The forest, to the naked eye, is normal. It seems a simple recreation of the natural and pristine places of yesteryear, when technology hadn't invaded everything and nature hadn't decayed. It's a simple imitation, of course. This place is not natural, not really. The trees have been planted in a special way. The environment is meticulously controlled. The species that inhabit it have been specifically selected to be there and give the best experience to each client with enough money to buy a ride. The Sensory Woods is not a normal ride, though. Many companies offer walks through the artificial forests. Some do them by boat, and some even with a flight mechanism. We don't do any of that. We go further. Forest is specifically designed to be the perfect sensory experience. The trees in each of the places are pierced by special tubes through which the brains of our clients are transported. Yes, the brains. Clients pay a fortune to have their brains removed from their bodies and placed in sensory tubes, where they're connected to artificial sensory organs. Eyes and noses were specially created to provide the best experience of their lives, or so they say. Personally, I've never tried it. I find the idea of my brain being transported through the tubes a bit creepy. And the point is that artificial eyes give customers a privileged view of the species that inhabit the forest. The entire spectrum of colors that human eyes are capable of seeing, and some even more than we can see. The noses complete the experience, causing customers to be surrounded by the most inexplicable fragrances in the universe. Everything you can imagine in one place. While the brains take the ride, the client's bodies are kept in life support chambers, specially designed to keep them alive. As soon as the trip is over, the brains return to their bodies without any side effects, just with the memories of what happened in the forest. The result is the best sensory experience in the world. My job is to monitor the tubes through which the brains move. They are specially prepared to keep them alive and safe. They have the right nutrients, plus the right temperature, acidity, and radiation. Nothing is left to chance, and all data is displayed on my monitor. It's a simple job, if I don't think about the true implications of it. I'm helping people take their brains off and move them to and through places they shouldn't move them. But it's simple because nothing ever happens. Everything is so perfectly calibrated that I've never even seen a slight deviation from normal. And they pay me well. Can't ask for much more. Take a long sip of the coffee. It's at the perfect temperature. The new coffee maker is so automatic that it doesn't even need time to heat the water. I have no idea how it works, but it's the best coffee I've ever tasted. I guess the company wants even its employees to have a good sensory experience. I yawn a little. Look at the clock. There are about 3 hours until my shift ends. I look at the tube data again, but everything is fine, so I settle back into my chair and enjoy my coffee. The sound like an explosion makes me jump out of my seat. I inadvertently knock over my coffee cup, and the liquid ends up spilling all over the floor. My ears start to ring, and I put my hands over my ears to cover them, but the sound continues. I look everywhere. My companions are as bewildered as I am. I watch the monitors. My heart begins to race. The graphics indicate that the tubes have stopped transporting. Something has gone wrong. Very wrong. "System's down," someone yells. I look everywhere, searching for a more precise explanation. "Life support systems are down," one of my colleagues says. Her voice sounds shaky. "What do you mean?" I ask. "Deactivated," she repeats. "They stopped working. They turned off." She looks at me. There's panic in her eyes, and I don't blame her. Without the maintenance systems, the bodies of the people who are traveling will begin to decay, to rot, to die. "Yeah, how are the tubes?" asked my department manager. He's just as scared as everyone else. "They've stopped moving," I reply. "But the brains should be intact. They're not damaged, just detained," I hasten to add. "Should?" he asks me. Obviously, my attempt to calm him down hasn't worked. "I'm sorry," I apologize. I don't know what else to say. The monitors don't tell me the status of the tubes, not these at least. I'd have to review other data to find out. "I can't tell the structural state of the tubes from here. I can go and check the other monitors." Can't help talking. An explosion, and this time I know it's an explosion because I can feel the shock wave and see the fire, whips through the facility. The room shakes and we all fall to the floor. What we felt before must have been another explosion, but smaller. I hide under the table, my hands over my ears. The shaking stops, but there's a smell of burning. My ears are ringing even louder than before now, and when I open my eyes, I can see that the room has been filled with some pretty thick white smoke. I crawl from under the table and stand up with some difficulty, helping myself from the chair that's now lying on the floor. I look everywhere. My colleagues are also recovering. All the monitors are off, and the only thing that can be seen are the emergency lights. Oh, and if the life support systems were compromised before, now they must be... I don't even want to think how. Shattered. Disabled. What will happen to the bodies? My co-workers are covered in dust, and I guess that's my condition too. They all seem just as surprised and disoriented as I am. I don't understand what's going on, and we won't be able to find out from here. All systems are down. "No power," someone yells. I see my boss run out of the room. The rest of us look at each other and, without saying anything, decide to follow him. But it's useless to stay here after all. The corridors are in a terrifying gloom. Never seen them this way, not even on night shifts. The power to the whole place must have been turned off. With only the emergency lights as a guide, we head towards the sector where the bodies of customers are kept. The only thing that's visible is a small green light on the ceiling. The rest of the room is dark, and the tanks where the bodies are kept are not visible. You also can't see the operators, who should be working there. Boss is glued to the window, with the greenish reflection illuminating his features. He seems terrified. "They're gonna die," he mutters. "Everything is destroyed." "Isn't there something we can do?" I ask. He looks at me. Everything's quiet now. The ringing in my ears is over. So much silence is terrifying. "Pray that the brains are safe," he tells me. I bite my lower lip. We can't tell what state the brains are in from here. I look everywhere. My colleagues look at each other. They look at me, at the boss, then at the room with the bodies. Well, it seems that there's only one possible solution. "We have to go outside and check on the tubes," I say. The boss looks at me for a moment, and then sighs. "Yeah, it's the only alternative." "What good will that do?" asks one of my colleagues. "If they're okay, we don't know how long they'll last. I mean, if they're dead, we can't do anything to fix it." "I'm sure somebody's already on the way," the boss says. "Someone must have reported the explosions, I'm sure." He pauses. He actually doesn't seem sure at all. "We're not the only ones who work here. Maintenance should already be working on a fix. Our job is to control the tubes, keep the brain safe. Let's do our job." We all end up nodding our heads and following him. We continue along the corridor to the transition zone between the premises and the forest. The room itself is just as dark as the rest of the building. We manage to find the necessary protective suits to enter the forest. As soon as I put on the suit, a small screen activates on my left arm. It informs me of my vital signs and the general conditions of the environment. We go outside and the panorama seems even worse than inside the building. Nothing can be seen. The smoke is so thick that I can barely distinguish my own body. And my co-workers are by my side because I hear their footsteps. Footsteps against the undergrowth, crushing the leaves and breaking the small pieces of bark that have begun to fall. Flashlights can't get through the thick smoke, so they're of little help. I look at the little screen I have on my suit, which shows me where we are. The tubes are supposed to only be a few meters away. They have to be here, but we can't see them. I can't see anything. The screen on my wrist tells me that my heart rate is racing. Of course it is, you silly machine. This situation is hopeless. The whole facility is in danger, and the people in here are about to die. And me? Well, losing my job will be the least of my problems if those brains die. I stop short. That thought paralyzes me. But what paralyzes me the most is the fact that the texture of the soil has changed. I just stepped on something. Something soft, delicate. Something that shouldn't be on the ground. I look down. Shine the flashlight right at my feet, and there it is. My worst nightmare. How many years in prison will I get for murdering someone by stepping on their brain? So, my dear friends, yes, I know, this is 2 in a row in this format, but I have to say this is not going to continue. Okay, so it was a one-off, now it's a 2-off, and I'll be back to longer stories after this. I just had a build-up of these shorter ones that I wanted to put together in a couple of combinations. Pretty damn good stories as well, so I know a lot of you have enjoyed the last one, and I hope you enjoyed this one too. Back to regular business from now on, though. So, okay, those of you who didn't enjoy this format as much, well, so it's going to be back to the longer videos. Anyway, that is enough of me waffling. See you again with a podcast on my second channel tomorrow night, and I'll be back again here on Friday. Till then, my dear friends, hope you all sleep well. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this story today. Really means a lot to me and to the author of the story, of course. Well, if you want to know more about me, I'm pretty much everywhere on social media. You can find me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. You can download my music on SoundCloud. I've got a Patreon if you feel like. Throw me $1 or $2. Very much appreciated. And of course, on Reddit,
I have a place where you can leave stories if you want me to read one that you've written. Well, hoping to see you all again very soon. Till then, sweet dreams. Bye-bye.